Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome back to another video. And today we haven't done a video for a bit of time, just been really busy, but we're back now. I'll try and be more consistent with the uploads. And today we have my Champions League predictions. So this will probably be the last table predictions I do for this season, but of course it's a very big one, so I'll be going 36-1, and we'll just go through all the teams, and then I won't exactly go through all of the knockout stages. I'll just tell you probably my final and who I think will win the final, so winner and runner-up basically. And I think it'll be interesting. Get to discuss some teams who I don't usually discuss as well, so quite interesting to go through. And if you are excited for today's video, make sure you like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And now let's get into it. So firstly, just if you don't know, I'll explain to you how this format works. It's the second season that the Champions League has been done like this. So 36th to 25th go out in the league stage where all teams play 8 matches. Then 24th to 9th are in a playoff round. And then the winners of those will play first to 8th in a round of 16 match. And then we go through like a normal knockout stage. And this quarterfinals, semi-finals, final. So that's how it works. And now let's get into the table predictions. And coming in at Boston 36 for me will be Kairat from Kazakhstan. This is the problem with doing this. There are going to be some teams I'm not as familiar with. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I follow the Kazakhstan Premier League because I don't. And I'm just not that familiar with them, and I don't think they'll be able to compete with some of these juggernauts of European football we have higher up the table. Similar thing for 35th, Paphos from Cyprus. I just don't know enough about these teams. They've came through the qualifying rounds. Cara actually beat Celtic to get into the Champions League. So most of these teams have done well. They've got into the Champions League, but I don't know enough about them, so I can't really do too much of a in detail prediction about them. 34 Fab Slavia Prague, a team I'm a bit more familiar about, obviously Czech Republic from Prague. But again, I just don't think they'll be able to compete with the teams higher up the table. And then 33rd, I have Karabag from Azerbaijan. Again, I've heard of them from European tournaments in past seasons, but I don't know that much about them. I don't follow the league they're in, so it is harder to make a prediction. 32nd, Union Saint Gilloise. They've got in from the Belgian Pro League, and they've done really well in recent years in that league. They were a lot lower down in the Belgian pyramid, but they've came up and been really competitive at the top of the top flight in Belgium, so they're doing really well. And I think, they'll be alright, but they won't be able to make it into the playoffs. Then 31st, I have Bodo Glimt, obviously did really well to get into the Europa League semi-finals last season, and they have done great. So now they are in the Champions League, and I think they'll do all right, but just will struggle a bit and won't be able to get into the playoffs. 30th, Copenhagen. Again, these teams, I'm not too sure about them, but I just don't think they'll be able to compete. As I've said, Copenhagen, they're a real powerhouse in Danish football, but are they going to be able to do it against all the other European teams? 29th, I actually have Sporting Lisbon. Maybe some of you would have had a bit higher. Just, they've lost Gyökeres. Of course, Ruben Amorim isn't there now. So I do think they won't be as good and won't be able to make the playoffs. Then 28th, I actually have Club Brugge, who maybe some of you would have expected me to have maybe in the playoffs, have European experience, but I don't think they're going to be able to compete with some of the teams in here. Now in 27th, I have Ajax, of course, a big team, used to be really frequent winning the Eredivisie back in the Netherlands, but they just haven't been as consistent in recent years. Only 6 years ago, they actually got to the Champions League semi-finals. You may remember that Lucas Moura goal to send Tottenham into the final, but they did really well that year, and they are obviously a big team, but I just don't think they're as strong as they used to be and will fail to make the playoffs. 26th, Olympiacos, who have been doing pretty good in Europe in recent years. I think they're good, but there's lots of good teams on here, so I don't think they'll be able to make playoffs. And then just missing out on playoffs. This might be a bit of a controversial one. I've gone with Bayer Leverkusen. You know, they've sacked the manager Erik ten Hag after 2 or 3 games. That was a real surprise. I'm just not too sure if they're going to be as strong as they were under Xabi Alonso when they almost got a perfect invincible season, but just failed in the Europa League final. They did really well in the Bundesliga last year, didn't manage to win it again though, and I do really think they're going to fail to make the Champions League playoffs. And now we are into the playoff teams. So 24th, just sneaking in, I have Athletic Bilbao. They've got Arsenal tomorrow in their first match. That'll be an interesting one, and you know, I think they're pretty good. Did well in the Europa League last year, just lost to Man United, but I don't think they will be any higher. But to get into the playoffs, I think would be a good thing for them to reach. 23rd, I've got Marseille. Yeah, I rate them. They've got Real Madrid in the first game. Certainly not an easy task, but I think they're going to be solid and manage to make it into the playoff spots. 22nd, Villarreal. Again, pretty solid. Interesting to see them in the Champions League, but I think they'll do alright and get in there. And then 21st, I've got Newcastle, who I don't think will be as impressive as Villa were last year, getting into the top 8 quarterfinals, almost beating PSG. I don't think they'll quite match that, but I do think they'll manage to get into the knockout stages. 20th, Monaco. Yeah, again, I think they'll be solid, pretty good, successful team in the French leagues, one of the bigger clubs. I think they'll be okay. Then 19th, I have Galatasaray, who have been pretty good. I definitely think we're going to see them doing well this season, which would be really good. Now, 18th actually have the Dutch champions PSV, quite high for them, but I really rate them. I think they're a good side, and they're going to manage to get a real comfortable space in that top 24 teams. 17th, Atalanta, again a team who we've seen pop up with some good European runs in the past few years. They're doing okay in the Serie A, so I think they'll be pretty good here. 16th, Frankfurt. Again, they've actually looked pretty good in the first few weeks of the Bundesliga, and they could even be higher, to be honest. It just depends on how the whole season pans out for them and how well they balance European football and domestic football, which is the thing for some of these teams like Newcastle, obviously, who aren't as experienced in Europe. You have to really work well to, of course, do well in the European competition, but make sure you're doing well in the league so you'll be back in Europe next season. More specifically, the Champions League, where a couple of the English teams, Newcastle and Villa, have fell short of, where they've done well, or Newcastle weren't great when they're last in the Champions League, but, you know, they've got into the Champions League, but then focused on that and let the league slide away from them and not manage to qualify again. Then 15th have Benfica, yeah, a real solid team in Portugal, and I think they'll do pretty well to get into a club spot. 14th Juventus again, a bit like Ajax, not the team they used to be, but they're still solid. They're still getting into Europe, getting into the Champions League, so pretty high respectable finish for them. 13th Tottenham, of course, a team I know more about than some of these because I watch the Premier League. I know more about it, and they have looked really good under Thomas Frank. I've been impressed by them. They've really had some great results against West Ham, Man City. So I think they'll do well in this as well and get to a pretty comfortable place. 12th Atletico Madrid. They're doing great. Diego Simeone, always staying with them for so long is great, and I rate them as a team, and I think they'll be okay. 11th Dortmund, not been as strong in the Bundesliga on recent years, but a couple of years ago they got to the final at Wembley against Real Madrid in the Champions League. They're a pretty good side, and I think they'll do well here. 10th, now we're getting to just missing out on those spots, just automatically through to the round of 16. I've got Napoli in 10th, reigning Serie A champions. We've got a good squad there, definitely will be pushing to retain that title. I'm not sure if they will. There is a certain team who I'm yet to mention who I think might get the title off of them, but they're a good squad and I think they'll do well in the Champions League. Okay, so 9th place, just missing out on that top 8 to automatically get into the round of 16. I have Bayern Munich. Yeah, a really good team, Bundesliga reigning champions. They do look really good. However, I just think they're going to miss out maybe on that final match week to get in. And then here's my top 8. Of course, it will be interesting to see how, like we saw with PSG, they almost went out in the league stage last year and they went on to win the whole thing last season. So it's interesting to see how it'll differ from league stage to the knockout stage. But 8th, I've got Arsenal. Yeah, I think they'll be pretty good and get in there. They've got Gyökeres now. Should be good in the league and good here. 7th, the team I alluded to earlier, Inter Milan. Yeah, I think they're going to beat Napoli to the Serie A this year. And I do think they'll also get into the top 8 in the Champions League. Would have been a big blow for them, that 5-0 loss in the final last season. But they're still going to be very strong. I think 2 in 3 of the last Champions League finals they've been in. That's a really good record, and I definitely think they'll be pretty good. 6th, the champions of the world, Chelsea. Again, one of those teams I watched more. They've had a few disappointing results, to Brentford, to Palace, but they've still looked good, and I think they'll be fine for the top 8. 5th, Man City, not as strong as they have been in previous years last season, but still a great team. And I think they'll be back. They've had a good win against Man U yesterday, and a bit disappointed against Tottenham and Brighton, but still, I think they'll be strong in the Champions League. 4th, I've got Liverpool, who I think will just be really focused on getting a good lead in the Premier League and won't top the league stage as they did last year. But I don't think that matters at the end of the day. As long as you're in that top 8, that's really good. But yeah, Liverpool, they're 4 for 4 in the Premier League. That'll be very good. 3rd, PSG. Yeah, I'm not sure if they will be as dominant as they were in that knockout stage, but still I think they'll do very well. They've got some great players like one who I think might be in a shout for the Ballon d'Or. I've not done my predictions yet, but there's a certain player there. But apart from him, we've got Achraf Hakimi, Vitinha, Ousmane Dembele. Yeah, alright, that's the player I think might win the Ballon d'Or. But the predictions hasn't happened yet. I'm not decided. I've got a good idea, but I'm not decided. But yeah, they've got a good squad. I think they'll do well. Second, Real Madrid. Yeah, lots of people think they'll lose out to Barca again with the La Liga, but I actually think they might beat them in the. Oh, I've said it. It doesn't matter. I actually think they're gonna win the La Liga, but I'm not sure if they'll be able to beat Barcelona to the Champions League stage. That's only the league stage, but yeah, I think Barca will top it. Great team. Maybe Lamine Yamal or Rafinha could win the Ballon d'Or. They've got a good team, and I think they'll do well and win the league stage. But as we learned last year, that doesn't mean too much. And I do think they'll get into the final in Budapest against Liverpool. I think that'll be the final. So 2 teams from the top 8 in my predictions, but anything could happen. And I actually think Liverpool will win the whole of the Champions League. I think Barca will top the league stage and get into the final, but Liverpool will manage to go and get it. A repeat of that incredible semi-final again from the 18-19 season. What a two-legged match that was. I think we'll have another game with fireworks. It'll be a great match. And yeah, but they're my predictions. Really looking forward to this Champions League season. So yeah, that's my predictions. Do you guys agree with it? What do you think? Nothing too controversial here. I mean, Leverkusen, could you say them not being in the top 24 may be a surprise? But apart from that, I think it's all not too shocking. But yeah, really looking forward to the season, as I said, in the Champions League. I might do some individual game week predictions if I get a chance. And yeah, I'll get some more ideas for videos and we'll keep the content flowing. Let me know if you have any ideas for videos. I'll always take them on board. And of course, like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all of that. And one thing left to say. Bye and peace.